review today by the means of this pop quiz, and you can mark yourselves of how well you did. Just to want to make sure questions are on the board. Wanted to make sure that we're speaking the same language. We know what's going on. There's some major topics we've covered in the last month or so. So let's start going over the questions. You've had some time now to write things down. Question number one is, who were the Rishonim? So you can tell from the question, the Rishonim, it's a concept, it's a title that we give to a group of who? A group of somebody, of some people. Who are these people? Who wants to answer? Moshe, why don't you start us off today?
So the Rishonim were rabbinical scholars who lived during the later Byzantine era. So
Give us some time.
like
timeline.
1000 to 1500 Common Era.
Excellent.
Like Rashi, Rambam,
Excellent.
Ramban.
Yes. All of the above. Excellent. Good answer. Rabbinic scholars from those 500 years. Very good. Yeah, you wanted to add
I
to that?
just want to clarify, the Shulchan Aruch, that was a part of this period, correct?
It's a very good question because it's really the borderline. It's the borderline between the Rishonim and the Achronim is usually drawn with Yosef Karo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch.
Okay.
And so you'd be correct if you wrote he was a Rishon, if you'd be correct if you thought he was an Achron. But he's right on the border there. That's,
Not to cause a tangential question, but why is that considered like the border point?
It's a good question. These demarcations are very hard to really put your finger on. The difference between, of course, Rishonim means the earlier commentators, and this as in contradistinction from the Acharonim, the later commentaries. Later being, I guess, from 1500 and on until today. Some people would say we're still part of the period called the Acharonim. Some people suggest that our millennium, 100 years, what's 100 years? But
Century.
our century already marks a new age of Acharonei Acharonim, the later of the later commentators. So maybe we're in a new era. I don't know. It's hard to say. Usually these things are defined in historical perspective, but looking in retrospective. So in retrospect, there is this demarcation line between the earlier commentaries and later commentaries. I believe that there's a difference in the style of the way they write and the way they think. Of the earlier commentators being more bringing the Talmud to us. What this comes after, of course, is the period of the Talmud. There's another period in between the Talmud. It's called the period. Anybody? Extra marks. Who came between the Talmud and the period where the Rishonim start? If you said the Rishonim start about 1000, we said that the Talmud was compiled, finished, at least the Babylonian ones, around 700. So what happened in those 300 years? Who were the leaders? What was that known as?
The Gaonim.
Excellent. The Gaonim, the Gaonic period. The Gaonic period, they started to bring the Talmud to the people to practice, but the Rishonim really interpreted the Talmud in the most expansive way that we have record of, and developed and furthered the thinking of the Talmud in a tremendous way. So, in history, in secular history, there's something called the classical period. And then there's the Middle Ages. Right? And that is usually understood that way as, there was the Dark Ages, and then the Middle Ages, and then what's now? We're the Enlightenment. We're we've made progress, and everything in the past is like on a lower level. Jewish thinking doesn't see it that way. As a matter of fact, one could make the claim that period of the Rishonim was a golden age for Judaism, despite the fact that we were, of course, not in our land and historically persecuted and moving from one country to the other. But the amount of of rabbinic output of learning and teaching, which was done, was unparalleled in the period afterwards. So there was really it was a period of tremendous growth and development of the Talmudic Jewish scholarship during that period of the Rishonim. So they get their own age. It's called the Rishonim era, and have special status goes along with that. Whereas an Acharon can technically argue against the Rishon, but it's less done. Usually we treat the Rishonim with more respect, and we interpret rather than directly go head to head. Although it's not really illegal. It's not really illegal. An Acharon can say, I interpret the Gemara differently than the Rishonim, but you'll see that it's rare. It's rare. Some people would debate that if it's even allowed, but I think it is allowed. But
The word argue is such a harsh word. I think you a word like counter.
Counter, right? Okay.
One might want to counter.
Right. It's not just a question of etiquette, though. These are very essential questions when it comes to understanding how the Jewish tradition, the halachic tradition, works. So it's a good question, but I made a long answer to a very simple question.
Gotcha.
About the Rishonim period. Okay, that was question number 1. Very good. I'm impressed so far. So far, good. We're on the same page. Question number 2. Who would like to take? When did the Maccabees live? Yoshua.
Roughly around 300 BC.
Keep going. Okay. Not wrong.
Because Alexander the Great comes in at 333 BC, and then it's a good
I
while
don't remember those dates
afterwards.
off by heart. It's just amazing.
And then it's a good while after before they actually have to fight back, so I don't remember the exact date.
Right. I think we spoke about Hanukkah being about minus 165, 163, 4 or 5 different accounts. And then really they came into their own in terms of some form of leadership, of different levels of government, different levels of sovereignty, from then up until the Roman era, which is about the turn of the millennium. A little bit before year 0 is when the Romans really took over, and there was still some Jewish leadership. I mean, even Herod was somewhat Jewish, right? Who reigned around year 0. In any case, so fine, that's a good answer. I guess I'd say the last 200 years of the previous millennium, right? The last 200 years before the year 0 is when approximately the Maccabees ruled. And of course, this is when the Hanukkah story happened. Right? Good. Number 3. Name 3 members of the Great Assembly. What you got for us, Russell? You got something?
Ezra?
Ezra's good.
Sure.
What's 1?
It's 1.
That's 1. I need 3. Who are his friends? You know that. It's in your head. Russell, help me out.
So Haggai, Zechariah, and
Malachi. Usually the 3 goes together. Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi are the 3 prophets that were part of the Great Assembly, the men of the Great Assembly. Of course, they were involved in the coming back to the land after the Babylonian exile. Excellent. And you're not wrong with Ezra. Malachi,
Okay.
is he on here?
Or am I just can't go?
Funny. I don't know why he's not in here. Because he's got his own book. Why is Malachi not on the list of prophets? I don't know. He left him off. I have to ask Rabbi Kaplan. Unfortunately, he died a long time ago. But
Ouija board.
Wait, sorry, just to clarify.
how many sins do you want to do on one day?
Apologies, just to clarify, can you just clarify briefly who is Malachi?
Malachi is one of the books of the Bible. It's a prophet who has the prophecies. Chronologically, he's known as the last one.
Found it.
You found it. There you go. It's the last of the 12 minor prophets.
Okay.
And he also lived at the same era, sometime at the beginning of the Second Temple era. Okay, good. So 3 members of the Great Assembly. And then you have in your chart, of course, a few others, right? Ezra was right, Nehemiah, I assume. And we don't have a lot of actual, we don't have the minutes. We don't have the records of the meetings. We don't have an official roster. But whoever was a great leader, Torah leader of the Jewish people in that era, we say that I think the tradition is that he was a member of the Great Assembly. Number 4, name 3 works by the sages. This I'd like to hear. Like some good answers for. What do you say, Yaakov? What do you got for us?
All right, give me 1 second. I have the Mishnah, Gemara, and the Midrash.
Excellent answer. That was an excellent answer.
Wow.
Those are the 3 I was looking for. The Mishnah, the Gemara, and the Midrash.
I still don't understand. What
I'm
the
really
Midrash is.
proud. I'm really proud.
You should be proud. I didn't know what those were like a month ago.
I'm proud. My eyes are welling up with tears.
I still don't really understand what the Midrash is.
Okay.
Because I remember
Well,
my dad reading the little Midrash says to me.
Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's
yeah.
the only context to knowing what it is.
Okay, I'll do a brief review of that then. We did talk about it. Maybe you weren't here that day, whatever. But the Midrash, the most important thing for you to recognize is when it comes from. What era? It comes from the era of the sages. It's the same scholars that appear in the Mishnah and in the Gemara. They also, their words and their teachings appear in the Midrash. It's a collection of the writings of the works of these sages. By the way, I didn't put it on the question, but for extra points, give me 2 subcategories of the sages. Someone give me, we call them
Tanaim and Amorim.
wrong. That's the period 1,000 years later.
Mhm.
Very
Tanaim.
important not to get confused.
And Amoraim.
That's right. Tanaim and Amoraim is the way we usually divide it up. The period of the sages. The period of the sages is approximately near 0 to 500. First
Was
200 was
Rashi not a sage? I mean,
no,
he was
No.
a sage.
no.
Very sage-like.
He was very, very genius. No question. about it.
Not
But he-
according to the timeline.
So I guess
He was a
Science
rabbi.
sage.
You can use the terms colloquially and say he was a rabbi, he was a sage, he was a genius.
Mhm.
But in Jewish history, to get matters straight, each one of those terms has a specific context. If you call somebody a Gaon, he's from the Gaonic period, right?
Like
Which-
the Gaon of Vilna.
Except for
Oh.
the Gaonic. That's the one exception.
Okay, damn.
and
So
and
do I know.
nowadays, if you read the Haredi newspapers, everybody who they finds favor in their eyes is called a Gaon. So the term has become really watered down. But in the day, the Gaonic period, it was an official title. The leader of the exilarch from exile, the leadership in exile of the Jewish people had the title the Geonate, right? There was this official institution called the Geonate, and the leader was the Gaon, and we have a chain. We know exactly who were the Gaonim, one after the other for a few hundred years.
Mhm.
So that's Gaon and sage. So a Chacham nowadays, every Sephardi rabbi
It's a
who
sage, exactly.
is called a Chacham. So when we talk about Chachamim,
Mhm.
Zichronam Livracha, are sages of blessed memory, that refers to only sages in the first
Mhm.
500
Okay.
centuries of the
There's a
previous
sage
millennium.
called, something Baal. Something Baal, I swear.
Could be. I don't know what you're
He's like,
talking about.
they call them a sage as well.
Okay, I don't know.
It's very interesting.
Anyway, so the Tanaim and the Amoraim is what I'm looking for. You could throw into the sages there. Someone help me out. That was a good answer. Tanaim and Amoraim. Tanaim authors there whose writings are collected in the Mishnah. Amoraim authors whose writings are collected in the Gemara. There's a third term for people that came before the Tanaim. We dealt with it when we were learning Masechet Avot. Chazal's the sages. That's just
okay.
Chazal stands for Chachamim, which means sages. Zal means of blessed memory. But before the Tanaim came,
What would it be? Does it go?
that's it. Pairs, the Zugot. There's the early Tanaim, you could call them that, or pre-Tanaim, the pairs. Right, we spoke about that. We learned Masechet Avot, the chain from Moshe to Yeshua to Zakanim to
So
Nevi'im
they
to
came after the
Anshei
Tanakh
to
was
the
already.
Zugot. Sorry.
So the pairs came after Ezra had finished.
Correct. Yeah, definitely. Okay. So to answer your question though, what is the Midrash? The Midrash is a collection of words of the sages, the same time period as the Mishnah, same time period as the Gemara, but their works were collected in a different fashion. The most famous fashion that everybody knows is the Mishnah and the Gemara, and the structure is such that there's 6 orders to the Mishnah. Anybody can recite what they are.
What's that? Sorry.
Zraim.
The 6 orders of the Mishnah, right?
Oh, Nezikin and
Do you want it in
You
order?
got 2.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
I don't. I just wanted to tell you that
Nezikins are
basically-
Taharot.
yeah, good.
Um,
Nezikin, good.
Hang on.
There's 6. You got one?
Kedoshim?
Yeah.
Kedoshim.
Kodashim, really? It should be
Okay.
pronounced. Yeah. And
Hang on. I know it.
I don't know which one we missed.
the last one, I think.
Tohorot.
Moed and Taharot, right? Right. So there's 6 orders of Mishnah. Who made up this designation?
Moshe.
No. Who made up this categorization system? The 6 orders.
The sages?
One of the sages in particular. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Rabbi Yehuda. The Nasi. Nasi is
A prince.
a prince,
Nasi.
the leader, right? We talked about
Not a
that,
governor.
right? In year about year 200, so in the middle, smack in the middle of the sages period, he created this structure. Wait, so where did they record all the words of the rabbi sages? Okay, before that, he created such a structure.
That's the Midrash.
Midrash is the name of the books, the type of books, which are collections of the rabbis' words, the same rabbis. But the structure is not the 6-part structure that we just. What is the structure? What is the structure of the Midrash?
It's based off of the Parsha, isn't it?
It's based off the books of the Tanakh.
Yeah.
Not only the Parsha, but also there's Midrash on the Megillot. There's a Midrash on the Nevi'im.
The
Some
content's
books.
completely different.
Wait, I'll tell you about the context in a second.
Sorry, can you clarify there's a Midrash on?
There's a Midrash on all of those, almost.
So when you
Not all of them.
When
There's a
you-
Midrash on Tehillim. There's a Midrash on Shira Shirim. Yes, that is what distinguishes Mishnah from Midrash, is the
Structure.
organizational structure. Who speaks in the Midrash? It's the same rabbis who speak in the Mishnah and Gemara as well. Some of the Midrashim are later. They come from the Amoraic times.
But when
Okay,
you
I want to
read
make
the
that clear.
Mishnah-
One second. Let me explain. Now, what confuses people is they don't realize. They think, well, the Mishnah and the Gemara, that's all legal stuff, and the Midrash, that's all fanciful stories and legends. Both of those parts of that statement are wrong. The Mishnah and the Talmud, as a combination of halachic discussions and also agadic discussions, which means everything other than halacha.
Just conversations.
Conversations,
Stories.
legends, history,
Gemara
advice,
has that too.
all sorts of stuff. Tons of that in the Gemara, majority even. And what people don't realize is that in the Midrash also,
Mhm.
those books that are formed sort of like commentaries on the books of the Bible, they include halachic material as well as agadic material. Most people don't know that. They think Midrash, that's agada. Talmud, that's halacha. They're both wrong. Talmud has both in them, and the Midrash has both in them. Sometimes what you do find, though, in the Midrash is that you have 2 different Midrashim. You have something called Midrash halacha, which it's more like the Talmud. It's a mix. And in Midrash agada, which is mostly agada. It's also a mix. They're all mixed. But I'd say, 90-10. In Midrash halacha, you have 90%. Closer to 60-40 halacha, but Midrash Agada you have 90-10. Midrash Agada is mostly non-halachic material. You do have some halachic discussions in there, but very, very minimal. So, Moshe, how's that? How you doing now on Midrash?
Okay.
Doing good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
Vaguely.
I have the impression, and I want you to tell me if it's wrong, that I feel like more time and effort and everything is given towards studying Talmud, like specifically Gemara, as opposed to like the Midrash.
Correct.
Why is that the case? Is the content different? To what extent is it different, I should say?
It's a good question. Really, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi Judah the Prince, as he's known, year 200, he created a revolution, really. And creating this structure, the 6 orders, and the discussions from then on really primarily take place under that organization. And that's why you're studying Mishnah and Gemara, studying the Talmud. The Talmud becomes the foundational book of Judaism. The Midrash, although many of the teachings are the same, many of the teachings are parallel. There are discussions in the Midrash in parallel to discussions in the Talmud. The Talmud really took over as the central repository for Torah scholarship. Okay. By the way, I just wanted to say, I got the other day from upstairs, I found this in another book, another room in the Machon, and this is an edition, 3-volume edition of the Mechilta. Mechilta is one of the Midrashay Halacha, the Midrash Halacha, and I'm putting it into our Midrash section right across the room. Take a look. If you can see me all the way across the room. Say hello, everybody. And we have a column here from Midrash just so that I can teach you this lesson. And there are many collections of Midrash. The only Midrash Halacha that we had up till now was the Mechilta in this edition, 3 volumes, with English translation, introduction, and notes by Jacob Z. Lauterbach. Now we have 2 copies of it. It's the same one. And this is a Midrash. This is halachic Midrash. The rest, Midrash Rabbi, Midrash Tanchuma, and even the Midrash says that your father read you, those are Agadic Midrashim. Primarily, 90% are Midrash, whereas the halachic ones are more like 60-40 halacha. There's still a lot of Midrash in them as well. Okay, exactly. This is the Midrash section. There's more. This is an amazing collection here. This is a work which, if it ever gets finished, it'll be 30 volumes, not 10 like we have here. But I think only 10 or approximately were ever translated. This is an encyclopedia of biblical interpretation. Basically, a fellow who lived about 50 years ago, died about 50 years ago, maybe a little more. His name was Rabbi Menachem Mendel Kasher. He was kosher. That was his name. His name was kosher, right? Okay? And he decided, I'm going to make an encyclopedia. What did he do? He said, on every pasuk in the Torah, I'm going to go through and collect all of the Midrashim. I'm going to collect it from the Talmud. They're collected in a book called Ein Yaakov. I'm going to collect them from Midrash Rabbi, from Midrash Menachem. Also from the halachic Midrashim, the Mechilta, for example. I'm going to collect them all and put them as a commentary on the verses. You can see one verse up here, lots and lots of Midrash underneath. Collection of all the Midrashim. He even included work of Midrashim which have never been published. And in his day, the Midrash Hagadol, for example, a Yemenite manuscript, which survived, but was not well known because it was never published, printed. So he collected from so many places, a tremendous scholar. And the entire set in Hebrew is over 30 volumes. In English, they only translated, a few volumes. First, I see 6 volumes, but that's about it. By the way, there's another version of the Midrash Rabbah. This is one translation, and this down here is the art scroll. Recently, meaning in the last 5-10 years, they came out with an art scroll edition of the Midrash, where you have the Hebrew and the English, as is familiar from the Shatstein Talmud edition. Okay, so this is the Midrash section. Clear? So far, so good?
Yeah.
We are up to number, name 3 works by the sages. Excellent. Mishnah, Gemara, and Midrash are the answers. There's a few other books, but we'll talk about it another time. Okay, number 5. Question number 5. What's the question?
How many grandchildren did Abraham have?
Oh, that's an interesting
Children
question.
and grandchildren.
Children and grandchildren.
Does it say children?
Yes.
Yes.
Really? Oh.
I just
He had 2 children,
2 children. Good.
Ishmael and Isaac.
Ishmael and Isaac. Good.
There's more than that, though.
Actually, he had more.
A lot more.
He had 2 that
How many
matter.
more? No, they all met him. Sorry.
There were 6 sons of Keturah.
6 sons of Keturah. It says that when he got older, he took a third wife. Some people say it was just Hagar once again. The Midrash says that there was the same second wife who was once upon a time the maid servant of Sarah. But he had 6 children with her. And then
With Hagar?
Keturah, she's named there in that Torah description. She's named Keturah. According to the sages, one interpretation is it's the same woman. She had 2 names. Hagar and Keturah were the same person. And in any case, Keturah had six sons and
there were 7 grandchildren.
7. I was looking for 6. The sum total I was looking for was 12. The sum total I was looking for 12. And this we talked about the number 12 being repeated over and over as being a great nation, and Avram was promised to be a great nation, but he has to wait for it. Mm-hmm. He does get it somewhat from the Keturah side, but Yitzchak doesn't have 12 children. Only Yaakov has 12.
Yeah, I misread the question as grandchildren, so I just wrote at least 2.
Fair enough. Number 6. Name 3 tractates of the Talmud.
Oh, this I can do.
You. Wait a second. I want to hear what Ariel's answer is.
3 tractates of the Talmud.
You've been studying Talmud for years. That's why I say you. I mean, you're a great student, and I want to hear your opinion, but it's just not fair. You've studied many of them. Of course, you know their names. But for somebody who's more of a beginner, I think this is a better question.
Yeah, so we have Brachot,
Good.
Shevit,
Mm-hmm.
and Trumot.
Excellent. Good. They're all from the order of seeds of agriculture, right? And one of the ones we studied the other day on Hanukkah, the beginning of Hanukkah.
Oh, that was Sukkot, right?
Nope.
No.
Where did we find the pairs? The list, the chain of transmission.
Oh, Avot.
Avot, Masechet Avot. It's one part of
And
the.
then the Mishnah, not the Gemara.
Doesn't matter. It's still part of the Talmud. 3 factors of the Talmud. The Talmud includes all of the Mishnah and all the Gemara. So.
Yeah, I thought we were referring to specifically Gemara.
It's a good question. Oh, tricky. It's tricky. But you're not wrong. And what did you have written down, Yaakov?
I had the same as Ario.
Really?
Yeah.
Brachot, Shvit, and
I just wrote.
Trumot?
I don't. I wrote down. I wrote down Brachot.
It's the first one. That's
yeah,
good. That's a good place to start. Yeah.
And then I wrote Pea and Demai.
You wrote the first 3?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Here. I have a question, Rabbi. Just to clarify, the Talmud, they organized the sages organized the tractates according to how did they decide the tractates is more so my question.
It was just a brain stroke of genius by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. He made it up.
But okay, so there's no what's the right way to say this? There's no halachic reason of why he put the way that this.
No, I think there might have been traditions beforehand. Obviously, the topics are kind of obvious.
Yeah, the
there are
topics, I
separate
understand.
topics. But
the
to
order.
put them order in that specific order, I think it's Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's brainchild.
Okay. All right.
Good. And the last one on a different topic, which we dealt with, the order of the Shacharit service. 2 sections of praise in the Shacharit service. Anybody want to answer that? Russell, go for it.
So I wrote down the Psukkot Zimra and the Birchot HaShachar.
Good. Those are good answers. Of course, Psukkot Zimra is the central one. That's the name, right? It's the songs of song or section, verses of song or verses of praise. So then you say also the Birchot HaShachar. Birchot HaShachar is lots of praise. It's true. Where else? Where else do we find a section that has praise?
There's the first section in the Shemona Esrei.
Good. The Rambam famously divides up the Amidah into 3 sections and calls the first 3 blessings to be blessings
the
of
first
praise.
section, because there's 3 sections in it. So the first
Right, the first
three brachot.
Yes, excellent. Good. Okay, so we're doing good. I'm encouraged that we haven't gone too slow and we haven't gone too fast. Mostly.
Sorry, can we just
people know what's
repeat
going on.
the answer to the question 7? It was the Suke Zimra.
Sukkot Zimra and one other. Now, the one other could be if we heard two answers here. One where Russell said it was the morning blessings.
The morning blessings, but that's not to be mixed up with the blessings of the Torah.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah,
Blessings
gotcha.
of the
Okay.
Torah. Also, they have praise in them. Thank
but
you,
they're
Hashem, for
not-
giving us the Torah to the Jewish people. They're not solely praise, because there is one part of it which seems like it's a bracha on a mitzvah, like the bracha before you put on tefillin, before you light the Hanukkah candles.
Yeah.
In a year from now, it has the all famous "Who commanded us with His command, sanctified us
It's
with
a
His
praise
commandments."
for commanding us. It's praise for giving us the opportunity to do it.
We can discuss the blessings over the Torah for months, but we're not going to do that right now. Okay, what I'd like to do now, to start off our next section, which we're going to be doing primarily starting tomorrow, the section on the fundamentals of faith. And as you've already learned a little bit about the library, so that's the Tanakh section, Midrash, Mishnah, Gemara, Halacha, and we have the Jewish festivals. We learned from there on Hanukkah. We picked out some books from there. Then we have a section on prayer, section on special Eretz Yisrael Torah, and a section on Jewish history. But this entire wall over here, it has only one label. It's called Jewish thought. And in all of this label, we're going to find lots of books about our Jewish philosophy, Jewish fundamentals of faith, which we're going to discuss next time. So for the next few minutes, what I'd like you to all do, get up out of your chairs and pick out a few books that you find in this wall, in this section of the library, that speak to this question, understanding the fundamentals of faith, of Jewish faith.
Isn't it just any book?
So not everyone is
When you
going
mean
to
faith,
be.
you mean like emunah, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll see how you do. I'll show the wall to the camera so everybody can see you guys searching and picking stuff out. I will also do that, and then we'll take a look at them together. This is easy. It's called Fundamentals of Judaism. Don't just get one, guys. Get lots. As many as you can.
What did I miss?
Everything.
We're looking for books about about fundamentals of faith in this section.
There's a book somewhere called.
Here you go, buddy.
Yep.
Can I see this book?
Sure,
Okay.
sure. That's what they're here for.
You can go here.
You haven't found any? Or you have found
Got a few.
You're still looking.
Supposed to get a bunch. So.
Yeah, as
Look
many
for
as you
more.
can, yeah. This should be here. This is Mishruta. Okay, let's stop for now and we'll discuss a little bit what we found. Then tomorrow we'll pick it up. Then we'll see. Okay, as you can see, I got quite a few. But first of all, let's start and see what you got. Yoshua, first one put away. You're just trying to be funny and get us out of the off of track.
Why?
What do you got there? The first book. Go ahead, present it. Tell everybody what it is.
It's called The Jewish Idea. I figured with a title like that, it's got to be along the line.
It's got a it's a,
But I
it's a
didn't
catchy
realize-
title.
I didn't realize that this is the second volume. I didn't see the first volume.
Still, why do I say it's a little bit off track? Because famously, it's written by the notorious Rabbi Meir Kahana.
I don't even know who that is. I just looked at the
Okay,
title.
fine. So he's a controversial figure.
Uh-huh.
He is here in the library, and he's a tremendous Talmud Chacham, no question about it. But he was a political leader, and horrible is he died al Kiddush Hashem. He died because he was Jewish. He was murdered in cold blood. An American Oleh. He's the father-in-law of our teacher Moshe Kaplan.
Mhm.
So
He's
Yeah.
really.
yeah, so he can tell you some stories about him. But so that's a little bit of a controversial book to start with in terms of talking the fundamentals of Judaism.
I
don't-
learning better
Yeah,
now.
but you don't know. Okay, good. Okay, so tell me about the other book you have.
The next book I have is 8 Questions People Ask About Judaism.
By
Uh,
Dennis Prager and Joseph Telushkin.
yeah.
It's actually a very old version. You have a collector's item in your hands because it's a very excellent
like it was
book.
printed in-
One of the most famous presentations of Judaism in the modern era. It's great. It's a great, great book. But why is it a collector's item?
Because it's old.
And it was reprinted many, many times
Oh.
as the 9 questions people ask about Judaism. It's
What was the 9th question?
the
they
9th
added?
one they added? I can't remember. I have to look. I have it at home. I think the 9 questions. We might have another copy of it here too. But look for the 9 questions people ask about Judaism, not the 8 questions. The 8 questions is one of the first edition. But there is an excellent book. That's a great idea, and you have a good presentation of a lot of basic concepts of Judaism.
Mhm.
Excellent. Okay, someone else, show me a little bit of what you found. Russell, what did you find interesting?
I have this book called
Shalom.
God Exists.
God exists.
I thought that was very fundamental.
It is, but who wrote it, please?
It is written by Joseph. I don't know how to pronounce the last name. It's like Davyydov.
Davidovitz? Or
Davidoff.
Davidov. Okay, I've never heard of him. God exists. Interesting. Okay. Definitely one of the fundamentals of Jewish faith, of course, is that God exists. So not a bad title. Anybody else want to share with me something they found?
Yeah.
Okay.
I also got the Universal Garden of Emunah. Figured Emunah's a very
Emunah's faith.
big,
Yeah.
important thing regarding faith of Judaism.
Interesting.
Pretty
Okay.
much the exact word you're looking for.
True.
And
Let's
that's
talk
by
about it.
Shalom Arush.
Yes, Rabbi Shalom Arush. Yeah, also a little bit of a controversial figure, but not as much as the previous one. He's alive today. He's alive
Yeah.
today.
His
Rabbi
books are pretty
Arush.
good.
And
Good
be very
sellers.
popular presentation of a specific style of how to live Judaism, more so than the fundamentals of faith in a philosophical manner. But we'll talk about it. Bezrat Hashem, to be continued tomorrow. By all means, continue to search and come up with good books. We'll discuss them more, and we're going to figure out what's the best structure for our discussion of the fundamentals of faith, and continue with that tomorrow morning. Good to see you. Shavua Tov and Chanukah Sameach. We have a